Okay, this is a video I can't wait to make. I'm super excited to review this Safari Ltd Daspletosaurus. This is a figure I recently got in a lot, and I'm just super excited to review it, so let's just get right into the video. So for the animal information, Daspletosaurus is a really cool theropod. It's pretty similar to T-Rex. It's almost like the T-Rex before T-Rex. It's closely related, they filled a similar niche, and they lived in a lot of the same locations before T-Rex in North America. And Daspletosaurus was around 9 meters, but still quite a bit smaller than its relative, being at 12 meters. And T-Rex was also a lot heavier, but yeah, Daspletosaurus was still a very large and really well-sized theropod. But now we'll get into the bit about the classification. Classification-wise, Daspletosaurus is in the family Tyrannosauridae, but in the subfamily Tyrannosaurinae. The subfamily is the Tyrannosaurus most closely related to T-Rex, including itself, and Daspletosaurus. But Daspletosaurus is also possibly the direct ancestor of T-Rex, but in the subfamily there's also Tarbosaurus, as well as, like we said, T-Rex. But then in the overall family Tyrannosauridae, there was also Albertosaurus and Corythosaurus. So Daspletosaurus has multiple species that lived in multiple formations. Currently, there are at least 3 valid species, being Daspletosaurus turosus, the top species, as well as Daspletosaurus horneri and wilsoni. And Daspletosaurus's fossils have been found mainly in 2 locations, in Alberta, Canada, and Montana in the United States. So we'll go over some of the formations that Daspletosaurus was specifically found in. Starting with the Oldman Formation in Alberta, Daspletosaurus would have lived with a lot of different dinosaurs, including Hesperonychus, Chasmosaurus, Parasaurolophus, Corythosaurus, and Maiasaura. This formation, Daspletosaurus, appears to be the only big or larger theropod, so it was probably most likely the apex predator, but there is a good chance that there was another large Tyrannosaur in this formation, considering the Tyrannosaur that appears in a lot of its other formations. But based off the fossils we have currently, Daspletosaurus appears to be the only really large predator in this formation. Next, we have probably Daspletosaurus' most popular formation, or at least whenever I think of Daspletosaurus, this is the formation that I normally think of, the Dinosaur Park Formation, also in Alberta, where it would have lived with Euoplocephalus, Chasmosaurus, Styracosaurus, Bogoceratops, Corythosaurus, Lambeosaurus, Parasaurolophus, Gryposaurus, Hesperonychus, and Gorgosaurus. So as you can tell, this was a very rich ecosystem that included a lot of ceratopsians, a lot of hadrosaurs, and 2 very large predators. Because, I mean, the amount of prey there was, it allowed 2 predators, but it was still a very rich ecosystem. Next up, we have the Two Medicine Formation, which part of is in Alberta and part of is in Montana. But in this formation, there was Ioneosaurus and Styracosaurus as the ceratopsians, with Gryposaurus, Maiasaura, and Hipparchosaurus as the hadrosaurs, and then Daspletosaurus and Gorgosaurus once again coexisted in this formation. This is another similar formation to the Dinosaur Park Formation, just swap out a few different dinosaurs, but overall a very similar formation with a good diversity of ceratopsians and hadrosaurs. One last formation we'll mention really quickly is the Judith River Formation. This formation included Daspletosaurus, Gorgosaurus, Corythosaurus, and even Deinosuchus. So you can tell that this formation included a lot of large predators, to have a large crocodilomorph in Deinosuchus, as well as the 2 large tyrannosaurs. And if I didn't mention, the Judith River Formation is actually all in Montana, but as you can tell, Daspletosaurus has a lot of overlap of the animals between its formations, but it was most likely the apex predator in its environments, but clearly had some direct competition with predators like Gorgosaurus. And there's even a theory that Gorgosaurus and Daspletosaurus, where they coexisted, Daspletosaurus would be hunt the larger, bulkier prey like the ceratopsians and ankylosaurs, while the predator Gorgosaurus would hunt prey like hadrosaurs. And obviously there would be overlap, like Daspletosaurus would easily eat a hadrosaur if it had the opportunity, and Gorgosaurus would easily eat a ceratopsian if the opportunity was available. But due to their builds of Gorgosaurus being sliders, faster, more agile predator, and Daspletosaurus being a little bit of a bulkier predator. That's at least what the theory is, or the reasoning behind the theory. But still, nonetheless, it's really awesome that we have so many cool formations that two large apex predators could coexist. And then one last thing that I will mention that I find really cool about Daspletosaurus is the thing that happened at the Field Museum. So the Field Museum bought a dinosaur named Gorgeous George to display at the museum. This was really supposed to be like their Sue before Sue, I believe. But it was thought to be a Gorgosaurus, but it ended up actually being a Daspletosaurus specimen. So it's really cool. So the dinosaur Gorgeous George at the Field Museum in Chicago was actually thought to be Gorgosaurus, and that's why its name was Gorgeous George, because, it fits. But it's actually a Daspletosaurus, which is still really cool, and just a really cool dinosaur, especially because the thing we're going to mention in a little bit about the Field Museum. But if you want to learn more about that situation, I'll put a link to the article on the Field Museum's website. But yeah, let's just get right into this figure review now. Okay, now getting into the figure review. So this is the first video we've actually had an opportunity to show my rotating display, so that's awesome. But yeah, for the figure itself, I really love this figure. I really like everything about it. I love the pose, the proportions, the colors. It's really great. And the proportions, like I said, all seem great as far as I can tell for Daspletosaurus. The body seems thicker in the right places, and just seems correct as far as everything I can tell, as far as like the proportions of the anatomy and everything. And actually, I really like the pose of it. I'll take it off the stand to show specifically what I mean really quick. But the pose reminds me of possibly two different things. Either it's like found a predator, like a Gorgosaurus, for example. Say a Gorgosaurus had killed a Hadrosaur, and the Daspletosaurus is like trying to scare it off the carcass, like make its presence known, that it's here and that it wants the meal, and trying to scare off the Gorgosaurus. Or possibly it's like encountered a herd of ceratopsians or something, and it's like startling them, trying to scare them, mess up the herd. So I definitely think it's a nice pose that really makes sense for something like Daspletosaurus. And I really love the colors actually as well, and I'll show specifically what I love about the colors on this figure. So this color scheme reminds me so much of the Safari Ltd Field Museum T-Rex. That's the thing I was mentioning, the other thing about the Field Museum that made me really love this figure. The color scheme is very reminiscent of the old Safari Ltd Field Museum T-Rex. Not the exact same greens and yellows, but as you can see, it's like a green top with the yellow bottom. And I just really think that looks really good together, especially with these two, being as closely related as I mentioned earlier. Super cool little figures, and definitely love how their color scheme pairs so well together. But yeah, I think this is a really great figure, a really great representation of Daspletosaurus. I think it looks great, and it has all the features that you'd want to see in Daspletosaurus. It's different enough from T-Rex that you can tell it's not T-Rex, but still has all the Daspletosaurus features. And it has like the nice little crest and everything, all the nice little features that you'd want on a Daspletosaurus figure. And yeah, I really don't have any issues with this. And actually, this is easily a big upgrade for my collection in a sense of size-wise and just accuracy-wise. And that's because the only other Daspletosaurus figure I have is the Dinosaur King Daspletosaurus. And I love this figure. I love the series. I've actually got some really cool Dinosaur King stuff coming up on the channel soon. But this figure definitely is more accurate. I mean, just the arms, the way that they're directed on this figure compared to this one obviously is an accuracy, and then just all the other features, but that's like one of the main ones. But yeah, it's definitely a big upgrade size-wise, as you can tell. But definitely still love that figure a lot, and like I said, I've got some really cool Dinosaur King stuff coming up very soon, probably the next video, honestly. But yeah, Daspletosaurus has actually gotten a lot of really nice figures recently, between the PNSO, the Howlin' Good, the Beast of the Mesozoic one, which I don't think is released yet. Possibly has, but I don't think it has yet. But it's probably honestly my least favorite. If I'm thinking of the right figure, I think it almost looks a little too bulky in the head, almost too boxy. But I mean, that could be right, but I don't know. I think if it's the right figure I'm remembering, I think it's probably my least favorite of the Beast of the Mesozoic Tyrannosaurs. But still, even the worst Beast of the Mesozoic Tyrannosaur is going to be a great figure. But out of all those figures, I really think that this one could easily be the best one. It just definitely seems like all the proportions, especially for an adult Daspletosaurus. Some of those figures look more like a juvenile Daspletosaurus, but I definitely think that this one fits everything as far as the accuracy, the looks, and especially with the price compared to those other three. I think this is probably the best route you can go. But yeah, even with all those recent ones, it's kind of funny. It's like there wasn't a good Daspletosaurus for a while, because the only one I can really remember was the Collecte one, which I always liked, but after seeing some more videos on it, I'm kind of skeptical on it. But it's funny, it's like we didn't have a Daspletosaurus for a while, and then it's like the four of the best brands out there all just made a Daspletosaurus in the last like 2 or 3 years. But yeah, so now we'll get into the featured documentary segment. So Daspletosaurus actually has appeared in a few good documentaries. My introduction to Daspletosaurus, or at least my introduction into documentaries of Daspletosaurus, was Little Daz's Hunt on Discovery's Dinosaur Planet. And I really love that documentary. You know, it shows a little Daspletosaurus go through its life and hunt, I think, Mysaura. And if I'm remembering right, I could be completely blanking on this, but I think it almost shows them changing to T-Rex and Edmontosaurus throughout this series. I could be completely wrong about that, but for some reason I think they do that in the show, but I'm not for sure about that. But I do know it starts out as Daspletosaurus, at least in the beginning of the episode. But still, I really love that documentary. I know that they gave him a little bit of personality throughout the documentary that some people weren't crazy about, but I personally did like it, because I didn't think it was over the top. I think it was definitely seemed like enough for them to just be animals, because it was more of just what they talked over and less of what the animals actually did. And then in Daspletosaurus also appears in Planet Dinosaur. I really like this documentary, and it's really awesome. This was one thing I really credit to Planet Dinosaur. They had a really awesome dinosaur documentary without having to include T-Rex. And I mean, they really used Daspletosaurus almost as a replacement for T-Rex, but still, it was a really awesome documentary, and they made it without T-Rex, and Daspletosaurus kind of took the T-Rex place, which I thought it did really well in the documentary. Yeah, I guess we'll go over the featured figures in the conclusion. I'm just going to do the conclusion first, because we've got a lot of featured figures throughout this video, but overall, this is a really, really great figure that I'm super happy with. And if you're looking for a Daspletosaurus to add to your collection, as far as accuracy, price, everything, I really think that this is probably the best one you can get. So yeah, now I guess we'll get into the featured figures. We have a lot, so we'll just get right into it. I guess we'll go more by like classification type stuff. So obviously, this is the Safari Ltd Daspletosaurus. I guess we'll do all the Tyrannosaurs and Theropods first. This is the Safari Ltd Albertosaurus, both recently released. Albertosaurus is personally probably my favorite of the two figures, just because Albertosaurus is my favorite of the two dinosaurs. But I do think these are both great representations of these two awesome animals. And then for T-Rex, we have the Safari Ltd Field Museum T-Rex. And then we also have the Dinosaur King Daspletosaurus. Stay tuned if you like Dinosaur King. I'd recommend, because we've got a really cool thing coming up with Dinosaur King on the channel really soon. And then we have the Safari Ltd Gorgosaurus, close relative of Albertosaurus. And then we have the PNSO Tarbosaurus. That's the last Tyrannosaur. So that's all the Tyrannosaurs that we featured in this video. Unfortunately, a lot of these figures, I believe, are retired. I think the PNSO Tarbosaurus and the two Tyrannosaurs you see on screen right now are all still in production, but unfortunately, a lot of these have been retired. Next up, I guess we'll go to the one other theropod, the Hesperonychus. This is from the Walking with Dinosaurs movie, just a small little dromaeosaur. So it's a really cool dinosaur that I actually have a figure of. What's funny is Dromaeosaurus actually lived in a lot of the same formations as Daspletosaurus, but I didn't have a figure of Dromaeosaurus, so I didn't get to mention it as much in this video. Next up we have, because whenever I do the mentioning what figure or what dinosaurs live with, and I say these dinosaurs live with, I usually don't mention ones I don't have figures of, but Dromaeosaurus did live in a lot of the same places that Daspletosaurus did. Next we'll go on the only non-dinosaur but another large predator, the Safari Ltd Carnegie Collection Deinosuchus. Really love this figure. And it's so cool that Daspletosaurus, Gorgosaurus all lived in the same formations, at least one formation. So next we'll go to the Ceratopsians. So we've got a lot of, so we've got a good mix of Centrosaurines and Chasmosaurines. So we'll do the two Chasmosaurines first with the namesake Chasmosaurus, as well as Vagaceratops. Then we'll do the Centrosaurines, Styracosaurus, and the Ionosaurus. The Chasmosaurus is the GeoWorld. I don't believe this is the Jurassic Hunters model. I have the Jurassic Hunters model, but I believe this is the other GeoWorld line, because I ordered an eBay lot and got this one, and it's different from the one I have from the Jurassic Hunters regular line. And then the Vagaceratops and the Ionosaurus are from Safari Ltd, and then the Styracosaurus is from the Safari Ltd Carnegie Collection. So all we have left is the Hadrosaurs and one singular dinosaur from another group. So we'll get it first, and then we'll mention all the Hadrosaurs. So we have Euoplocephalus. This is from the GeoWorld line. I'm not sure if this is the Jurassic Hunters or the other line, but it is the Geo World Euoplocephalus, and now we'll get into the Hadrosaur. So I guess we'll go with the, I'm blanking on what the groups are. A Saurolophine Hadrosaurs, I believe, and then there's the and Lambeosaur. I can't remember them, but we'll just go over all the Hadrosaurs because I'm blanking on the two major groups in the Hadrosaurs. So we have Gryposaurus, as well as Maiasaura. The Maiasaur is in the Carnegie collection, and the Gryposaurus was in the regular Safari Ltd line. Unfortunately, that figure has been retired and has become very hard to get. This is a Safari Ltd Carnegie collection Corythosaurus. The PNSO Lambeosaurus, a great figure. Can't wait to review that one in the future. The Safari Ltd retired Parasaurolophus. Really love that figure. And then the Safari Ltd baby Hipparchosaurus. I'm trying to get the adult one at some point, but right now all I have is a few of the babies. But overall, that's the video. Once again, I think I've already went over the conclusion, but if I haven't mentioned it, thank you all so much for watching. That's going to be the end. I'm out, and can't wait to review some more awesome figures and some other really cool content coming up on the channel, especially, like I said, with Dinosaur King. The next video, I think, for sure is going to be a Dinosaur King video.